So, what exactly is a star seed, and what is the process for finding out if you are one? So, I'm going to answer the first part. Junk, I want you to take away the second part because Vale did the best job Sunday night explaining it. So, I think you're honestly the best person to even try to even do an explanation like he did that night. So, what exactly is a star seed? So, a star seed is somebody who incarnated here on planet Earth with the sole purpose, and this sole purpose could have different branches leading from it, which means you're designed to go throughout different paths, different experiences in life than somebody else, and you will do something completely different. Your action will generate love and affection. Love and, you know, peace around you. No matter what you do, as long as you are aware that you're one, as long as you know that you're one and you see the signs, you understand what the universe is trying to communicate to you, you see basically life kind of not make itself malleable for you, but you see life kind of communicate you with a codependency. You know, life is a battle, and you are here and you signed a contract, and you are to go through different trials and tribulations. And regardless how you go through them, and regardless of what your end point is, all that matters is how you get to that end point. Junk, want to take it away?
Yeah, so kind of just to, foundationalize what a starseed is. Again, it's a multidimensional soul, something of which we all are, but to a degree of mastery, meaning that these souls come from the higher octaves of experience and they return. They return to be of service. So, I guess to answer the second part, what is the process of finding out if you are one? Intuition, inner knowing, heart coherence, meditation with your soul. There's so many different ways to find out if this concept or this identity resonates with you. But most importantly, we have to look at the breadcrumbs of characteristics surrounding a starseed, which is an inherent homesickness, an ability to tap into that kind of extraterrestrial cosmic heritage, something that you can sense lives beyond you, something of which maybe you've contemplated, you've had many lives before, and most of them not being of this terran plane, earth plane. So I would say the best way to start is simply to exercise your free will and put the intention out. If you haven't spoken to your soul in solitude, I highly recommend it, because being in that intimate space of self observation gives you the clarity of mind to remember and to dive into these Akashic records and quite literally feel and see memories that have since been forgotten. So, so many people maybe want to use it as a design or a fashion nowadays, but truly being a starseed is coming to the realization that you've returned, you've incarnated into this plane of existence to serve and to really anchor a high vibration so that the entire collective could feel the ripples and the wisdoms of the higher dimensions.
That was so beautiful, Junk. Thank you. Xenox, go.
Yeah, so I can more answer that more on of like a cliche or kind of a intellectual level. I know there's different ways that you might be asking yourself, uh, how do I know if I'm a starseed? Like both of you said, you might have a longing for home, a connection to stars, you might feel like that you don't fit in here. And you can even sort of what we did on our last talk. You can read through kind of like a tabloidy article of things that you could say, oh, maybe I resonate with that. See if you're a starseed, and just to name a few different types, there's like the Sirian starseeds, Pleiadian, Arcturian, Andromedan, et cetera, et cetera. And they all have their own characteristics, which we can get into to see which one you might resonate with more. And these are all to generalize, mainly speaking, because these are star systems. And you could be any kind of different alien or I guess soul group from that star system. But to generalize, those are the main characteristics that come from there. But what I do want to get into are soul groups, and so there's actually different waves that the starseeds come into, and right now in the spiritual community, they have, I guess, named these waves, and each of these waves have kind of like, again, just to generalize, a cliche uh, purpose or role or pattern that you see. And the most, I guess, known soul groups right now are the indigo, starseeds, the crystal, and the rainbow. And they're kind of like generations, in a sense, like how you have Gen Z, Generation X, etc. And the way you can identify them is different characteristics that they do throughout their lives and through their mission in their light work or work here on Earth. Yeah, that's my take on that. But personally, I've always felt like I was different from other people, I just was much more sensitive. I wasn't into like the whole partying or gossip thing, and I never really fit in anywhere, even like places that I did feel comfortable with. I was just different. Like I never like drinking or partying or anything like that. Um, but beyond that, I noticed that I was empathic and I was picking up on different traits from other people, uh, both negative and positive, subconsciously. Yeah, I think that's my take on that.
All right, thank you for that. You did awesome. Um, so, what are some practices that are extremely important for starseeds to know / implement? I would say probably one of the most important, and I would phrase me personally. I would phrase this in a different way than Junk or Xenox would. I would call this more or less connecting with your flow state. And what I mean by that is connecting with the point in your mind where you're not thinking about time. Time doesn't really matter. All you are is just in this moment. And that could be anything. That could be meditation. That could be listening to music. That could be focused in a video game. That could be focused in a movie or a book or riding a bike, or even working out. But just finding that, finding that singularity point in your brain to where you feel like both hemispheres are just working as one. You're not thinking about what's going on around you, and you're just focused in. I'd say that would probably be the most profound thing a starseed can do, because that's how we've seen and witnessed some of the most beautiful creations come in the modern world. Junk, Xenox, you want to add one on this? Because I know you guys both have your own takes.
Well, practice. That's a difficult question, but I think this goes for not just starseeds, but people who want to be, I guess, positive in their life in a sense that brings positive change. You know, obviously, you want to connect to your spiritual center. You want to meditate, whatever brings you closer to that sense of enlightenment, or how whatever word you want to call it. But you also want to ground yourself and realize you're here on earth and you're doing work not only for others but also for yourself to expand yourself and your family and those around you. Um, and it's kind of, one thing that I think a lot of starseeds can get carried away with is that they're always trying to help others when really they can barely help themselves. And so you have to make sure you have a good enough foundation before you start doing something like that. You have to build um, a foundation for you to give, if that makes sense. So make sure you're mentally stable, you're physically healthy, are steady, you have some sort of financial income, whatever that might be. You want to have a general sense of abundance, because if you're constantly worrying about everything and your root chakra is out of whack, it's going to be really hard for you to help someone else.
Junk, do you have any practices that someone could get into?
Well, yeah, actually, Xenox and yourself mentioned some very good ones. One of the most powerful practices, again, this applies to all souls, but specifically for star seeds, is the practice of grounding, connecting yourself to Gaia. And it's kind of like plugging into the mainframe. Because when you have, an elevated vibration in a non egoic way, more so than others, you need to do something with that. And so much of us want to serve, just as Enoch said. But again, it takes a very strong root. It takes your vitality to carry on and balance. And I believe that meditating in nature, feet on the ground, soles to the dirt, in the water, in the sand, wherever you are, whatever climate, is very foundational, and it will give you that strength and stability to carry on, and also upload your energy directly to the planetary grid at large, so which basically affects the entire collective. So I think this is one of the most powerful ones. Again, staying hydrated, breath work is another one to really create a strong foundation. But you guys mentioned some really good ones.
Andrea, do you have any practices that someone could use and implement that could be really important? I mentioned flow state. Junk just mentioned grounding, and Xenox mentioned keeping yourself healthy and just generally keeping your mind in a clear state.
As long as you don't have any past family history of like schizophrenia or mental breakdowns or anything like that, psychedelics could definitely be something that could aid you along in your journey. I know it sure as hell has helped me. I mean, I've only done mushrooms and acid, so I'm not, the biggest psychonaut on the planet, but they're they are definitely useful tools. Each person will experience each psychedelic differently, but for me personally, mushrooms are a far more emotional based kind of psychedelic. It wasn't very visual for me. I also didn't do that much, but so it was definitely kind of like weed's more well-traveled cousin, you would say, for me. And then acid was definitely more visual centered, and I could see mandalas and everything, which was really fun, including the hand towel in my bathroom, which I stared at for 20 minutes, so that was fun. um, and so like I feel like that is also, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it could lead you down some interesting paths for sure.
Oh, I do have an important point to make. One thing I want to say is important for starseeds or light workers or anything the like is to find like-minded people. to talk to be with, whether that's, just someone you talk with online, or even more powerfully, like a friend group, or someone, a mentor, or someone in your life, or people that share your same feelings, your same thoughts, and that resonate with you in some uh, way that's high vibrational. Because there's a lot of things in this world that are going to make our journey difficult. And us coming together as high vibrational people is going to be exponentially more powerful than doing your mission completely alone on your journey.
Absolutely powerful. Thank you, guys. I didn't even think of the mushroom component or the psychedelic component. That was very smart. Because I was thinking more in terms of using your own ability, but very smart. Thank you. What aspects of the starseed experience are required for you to reach breakthrough? So, one of the biggest things that I've personally come to understood when speaking to other starseeds, and myself included, is that life fucking sucks. And there are some people on this earth that don't deal with some of the shit starseeds do. And it's very interesting how some of us, react to different situations, how some of us are so much more calm, so much more collective, and then some of us just, downright break down in, many ways. One of the most fascinating things that I've also noticed is what a starseed does afterwards. And it's one of the most interesting things. I've done it personally, and that is when you realize everything is lost and you've got nothing, the only thing you can do is turn to yourself, and that's then leads to the biggest breakthroughs. When you then start that true relationship with yourself. And I'm not going to sit here and say having that relationship with God or spirit. I'm telling you to have your relationship with yourself. Because deep down inside of you, there is a vast world waiting to be opened, cracked, and explored. And it's up here, and it's all over the place inside you. And it's up to you to, make that connection. And if you don't, this experience is going to be much more difficult than you really think. And I'm not talking about, getting to a point of reaching the Kundalini, and we'll go into the Kundalini at another time. But for those of you that don't understand what the Kundalini is or have never heard of it, it is basically when your chakras are aligned in such a point that you feel a very large jolt of energy basically struck your spine, and it will travel from your base all the way up to your head, and there is a very big pop of just information, realization, understanding, and acceptance for your reality. So it's very fascinating to go into. But what I'm trying to get into is just on the fundamental level how one would have a relationship with God. It is one with the relationship of yourself. And that is all I have to say on this question. Junk, do you want to go?
What aspects? Breakthrough as an awakening?
Like breakthrough as in, think of your first star bloom and what you were going through with that and what you learned from that experience and how that type of trauma really, made you go inward. That type of breakthrough.
Yeah, well, I mean, more nonchalant way of saying it is that life teaches lessons. Catalyst sucks. But yeah, I mean, again, it's all a process of accelerated awakening and advancement. To come online as an awaken aware star seed is to go through some of these dark shadows of which refine us for the better. Um, again, if we all look back maybe 6, 7, 10, 20, depending on where you are in life, years, you can see how there's been a cause to the effect and vice versa, and how that has helped shape you into who you are today with this incredible, vivid self awareness and open heart center. Um, typically when we're in self service mode, it's when we're egoic and unconscious. But to have something to fight for, to have a mission to accomplish, which is, the testament of many star seeds out there, a fulfilling of the light, ambassadors of the light. Um, Breakthrough requires stress because stress cracks the mold, and you have to see these experiences not so much as happening to you, but for you, and be less reactive and more responsive because that is maturity at its finest. And I found even through my own personal experience that when these things happen, you have a choice to make. And that choice is either based in fear or love. And typically, star seeds will just inherently choose love overall because that's just their home vibration. It's their state of mind that they can always return to at center. So, yeah, I think as far as what aspects are required, trauma, sadness, depression, stress, anxiety. But on the other side, there's euphoria, peace, love, groundedness, community. It's beautiful, but you won't see the rainbow unless you go over the hill. So it is what it is.
I couldn't have said that better than myself. Good job, Junk. Does anybody else want to? No, Genox, you're ready. Let's go.
Oh, um, I was just gonna add like a personal anecdotal, I guess, parallel onto this or perspective. My breakthrough, um, well, I guess I had several, but my original breakthrough wasn't really like, I want to say, super spiritual. It was spiritual, but its main aspect was actually intellectual. I literally just started questioning everything in my life. I was kind of red pilled. My red pill journey actually led me down to a starseed path, which I guess that's a quite a steep slope there. But anyway, I started questioning things about politics at first, and then that eventually led to science, and then I got into quantum mechanics, and then I saw how that correlated with spirituality, and how I started seeing stuff like the Fibonacci sequence, and all these patterns come up, and I just started reading about quantum mechanics and how they have, oh gosh, I forget. If you look up like the soul monad, that's a great place to start, where it's essentially like an equation for the soul as an infinite shell of, I guess, expansive energy that can just take in knowledge. That's really layman's terms of saying it, but if you look that up, there's a much deeper explanation. Um, but anyway, my breakthrough literally was just about questioning everything and learning more and more knowledge and connecting the dots from literally every aspect of life. Um, and I constantly do this every day right now. As I'm walking through my day, whether I'm listening to podcasts about news, talking to someone in my life, I keep looking for a pattern and a connection that, what is God trying to tell me? What is the universe trying to tell me? What is going on in the world? Um, where do I fit into this grand puzzle, and how can I help people? It's like this constant puzzle my brain is computing, and it is kind of very cerebral. But none of that would be possible if I wasn't in touch with my emotions, because then I would be an aimless um, kind of computer, so to speak. And so that's a whole nother breakthrough. Emotionally, I kind of went on my own journey with that. And then that led me to my own heart, where I felt my own center and I was able to feel things more deeply and know myself.
That was very good input. Thank you. So, is it possible for a starseed to remain asleep? And if so, how long until they wake up? So, I find this fascinating because one of the interesting things that we have to understand, and this is myself included, not every starseed is supposed to be either caring, involved, understand, even want to understand, or care about what goes on in the political sphere, what goes on with this whole situation in Ukraine. They don't really care because they're focused on their mission. And they may not even know that they're on a starseed path. And I find those people the most powerful. As if they don't know that they're a starseed, that they're just here to do the work, call to action, and do it. And I also find this interesting because I also have my own theory that they are a type of sleeper, I would say. Like they just, when their time is right, it will just happen. It doesn't even need to be thought of. They don't worry about it right now because they don't need to. They're not. We have to understand this is not a sheep. This is not somebody lost in the matrix. This is just a pure conscious human being that doesn't see them as a starseed, that just sees them doing the work. And this could be just some entrepreneur doing some type of startup. This could be, that has a good cause. This could be, just a guy out in the middle of Africa building, wind farms for his town so they can finally have power to finally see the internet on a regular basis. I find these the most fascinating type of people because they don't know they're star seeds, but they're doing the work of a star seed. I want to hear your guys' input.
I totally agree with that, Scuba. I think you see a lot of those people, especially in government, because it would actually help if you were more deep into a system. I mean, think about it. If someone that was a starseed in government, who was a sleeper, all of a sudden wasn't a sleeper, and then they started talking about space and life outside of the Earth and all that kind of stuff, and like reincarnation, and not only would that perspective, even if they didn't talk about it, make it much more difficult for them to deal with everything that's already going on in their life, but also, they would be labeled crazy by their peers. It would make them a target uh, by the deep state. So it really complicates things. Actually, when you're aware of that you are a starseed, yes, it can help in many situations, but it can also make a lot of things more difficult as well. By far. Um, so yeah, that was a great point you did on there, Scuba. And I have more of a dark kind of perspective on this one. Personally, I think there are star seeds out there that have remained asleep or just gone so far down, that they off their path that um they might have even passed away onto a different life, or they're just too far gone. They could literally be homeless and addicted to drugs or whatever. Not to say that hope is completely gone. Even for those who have died, there is always life again. But my point being is that it's important for you to, even those that are asleep, it's important for you to stay, what's the word? I guess stay good, you know. And I'm not saying there's necessarily something bad about being asleep, like we just talked about with scuba. Um, but being aware of what's going on can also prevent you from maybe spiraling out into like craziness and getting addicted to drugs, or totally going so far off your path into materialism that you end up committing suicide or something like that. And so it does give you more control over your life in some aspects, especially if you're having difficulty. But Junk, why don't you lighten up the room here?
I would, but you actually made a great point, Xenox. That is probably the elephant in the room that a lot of us don't really acknowledge or talk about too often, which is the deep, dark stress of the third dimension. Um, I'm not sure if this is a shared characteristic between starseeds. I sure as hell know I'm in that boat, but of maybe not wanting to be on this planet, reaching a kind of rock bottom where you're saying, why am I here? What's going on? And of course, this is pre-awakening, but yeah, I mean, some simply don't make it to the activation stage. But nevertheless, just as Scuba mentioned, everybody's fulfilling their purpose regardless. So even in an unconscious phase, that empathy that comes out through that pure heart coherence is a trait of a starseed. That ability to see somebody as they are without filter is the facet of unconditional love. So everybody is here serving their purpose. Everybody's playing a role. And again, in the infinite scope of our existence, it doesn't matter if you're just here for the moment or if you're here for the long run. Um, the decisions you make and the polarization you take on when it comes to serving others or serving the self really do matter. And I think that in relaying to the question, it's just inevitable. If a starseed is able to hang on long enough to have that beautiful moment of realization and peace and communion with the universe, then that's when they can really step into mission. And I agree with both of you in the sense that an awakened, aligned, intentional mission focused by a starseed is just as impactful as an unintentional, but in the same degree, in the same vein, having an objective, having a goal and a mission to accomplish is the carrier for continuation. It's something which we would like to call hope. It's something to keep us going, keep us motivated in knowing that what we do here matters and it's going to carry on far beyond what anybody can really say. And I know sometimes when you go out there and say you are a starseed and you want to maybe red pill family or red pill your friends because you just want them to see the truth, chances are you're planting seeds deep into their subconscious that won't bloom for years. But when they do, they're going to come back to you and they're going to say, I see now, I understand now. And it's just about an alignment of consciousness. Sometimes it takes 24 hours. Sometimes it's instantaneous, or maybe it'll never happen. But as long as you're pushing forward, I think that is the greatest gift a starseed can have, is that continuity, that drive and ambition to hold the frequency and give love freely so that love may be exchanged in return.
Absolutely. Thank you to both of you for bringing up amazing points. And it's something that even myself I take for granted sometimes. how fragile life really is and how it is a gift that we're here. Although it's a struggle, it's a massive struggle. It's a gift that we're here. Does and can a starseed retain original memory? So what I mean by this is memory from past lives, memory from, seeing the veil, what you're, you signing the contract, you jumping down, the entire experience. Can and does a starseed retain its original memory? Andrea, I want you to answer this because I know you've done the research. If she
Oh
is,
no,
No,
I
I'm
know.
right here. I just had to switch apps. What was the question again? Sorry.
Does a starseed or can a starseed retain its original memory?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely isn't easy. But there are techniques out there. Like, I mean, a big one that I'm personally familiar with is QHHT, which for those of you who don't know is quantum healing hypnosis technique. It was created by Dolores Cannon, and it's a past life regression. Um, a past life regression technique, and it happens over the course of about 5 hours, where you have a little interview with the practitioner, and then for about 3 hours you're deep in it. And before you go into the session, it's always wise of you to like think of some questions beforehand that you might want to ask your higher self when you tap into them eventually, if you do hopefully tap into them, which I hear most people do. And yeah, once you're there, you can ask straight up, like, what am I here for? And because that was one of the things that I did, and it was actually one of the first questions that I asked. And I got my answer. I got told what I was here for, and it's kind of funny, like once you hear it, like coming from yourself, you can then almost look back in your life at like different decisions that you may have made unconsciously that kind of push you towards that path, or different times in your life where you were led away from that path and the consequences of that happening. And I'm sure those are other techniques. I'm sure there are other techniques, but that would be the one that I'm most familiar with.
Okay. I also want to. Nope. Go Xenox.
Oh, I just wanted to give my personal take. Um, I think yeah, it's definitely possible, but like Andrew said, it's very difficult. It might be tedious, or I think very, very few people are even born with their memories and that they retain them. Um, there's a question. Not only have we come here in this third density, um, in this generation, very cut off from our spiritual centers, so to speak, but also these memories don't really serve us a whole lot. I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot that can help us, but there's also a lot that would hinder us. I mean, I remember unlocking a memory from trauma once, and I literally saw myself being murdered in the back um, by one of my, I guess, friends or family members. Um, and that was on, I don't know, some different planet, but it was traumatizing nonetheless. But what it did serve to me is I guess I got to see how that trauma was holding me back in this life. So then that it was necessary. But um, I think what we retain is less so memories, but certain skills, I guess, like, well, that kind of ties into the next question, but like whether it's spiritual abilities or whether it's certain feelings that you have, like you're uh really in tune with animals or emotions or even skills that you might have or wisdom, or you might be constantly getting downloads from your higher self. And so there's a lot of ways that we quote unquote retain wisdom and stuff from our previous lives as a start being a starseed and stuff. But yeah, the memory thing is really tricky. So yeah, I don't know. Scuba, you said you had something to say.
Junk, do you want to go and then I will go?
Yeah, I got nunchuck skills. If that answers your question, Xenax. I'm sorry, I had to. You know what? Memory is an interesting facet because we have Akashic DNA, right? Everything's retained within the Akashic record. And it's fascinating to think that maybe some memories will seep through the veil of forgetting, just to remind us of certain elements of which we need to remember. So you're correct, Xenox, in saying that maybe temporary flashes will come through, depending on if they're, previous earthbound memories or if they're cosmic, of which I had one, which is actually extremely fascinating. I'll just share it briefly. I've never told anybody this, actually, besides Clara. It was during a QHHT, just as Andrea was specifying. And basically, I saw myself for, oh my God, it was like 5 seconds. It was the quickest flash, but it was literally me with another blonde-haired woman, and we were like Chewie from Star Wars, but instead of Chewie, it was like this giant Lyran, like extremely tall, and it showed me that there was some kind of unity or collaboration between the two races. So I think my understanding, the reason I retained that memory or that flash of regression was simply to correlate the companionship between star systems, which is fascinating. Again, you're not meant to fully dive in because if you were, just as Xenox was saying, you'd kind of be distracted from what you're actively doing here on Earth. We have plenty of time to remember. We have plenty of time to, you know, reminisce with our cosmic star family when we return. But for now, I think, right, it's just about being focused here on the planet, on the collective, on serving and establishing the frequency, and the memories come later. But it's definitely possible for sudden regressions to pop through every so often.
Now, I do have to say that as we continue on our spiritual progression here on Earth, and our vibration is raised more and more, and we come closer to the new Earth, I think definitely more and more of those memories will be unlocked, and as our collective psychic abilities grow too, we'll be able to connect to that in more of a deeper way than before. The timeline on that, I can't say. No one really knows. Go ahead, Scuba.
So you all bring up very interesting point, but you all also forget one of the biggest elephants in the room, and that is, what if you woke up with all of your memories and past 5 you kept them? And what if part of your contract is to remember your memories because you are to have a very specific data set of information inside your brain to try and translate in a much better way? Let's say you're an extraterrestrial from a very distant star system, and you're trying to better integrate the society into planet Earth come the breakthrough of extraterrestrial intelligence to the world. Or how about somebody who was part of the several million-year-old Martian race who came down and are incarnated as a Russian boy and started speaking in another language that his family had never taught him, started doing math equations that they didn't even know how to do, that the school didn't even know how to handle. He was actually on the news talking about his experiences and, what he came here to do, what his, past life was, why he's why he has his memories. It's very fascinating. So there are examples of this actually happening, and it's very few and far between. Don't misquestion that. It is very rare, but it can happen, and it's fascinating when it does, and it really makes you think how extraordinary our reality really is when you really look into it. So
Oh,
go
you
for
can
it.
go.
Go for it. Go for it.
No, I was pretty much gonna say is that, well, like during the QHHT session that I had, I was, as I was told what my life plan is I was also eventually told that at a certain point in the distant, not too distant, but distant future, that it's going to be part of my purpose to have a deeper understanding of certain aspects of things that happened to me and far away from this planet, because, and something I forgot to mention earlier that I wanted to point on, is that there is actually a very, very big clue that we give ourselves, each individual soul gives themselves when they incarnate on this planet, and that is found in astrology. And it is found within your north and south node axis, where your south node is what you're bringing in from your past lives, and your north node is what you intend on doing when you're here. And so if you can look, if you like are familiar with astrology, pull up your birth chart, and you can look at, like the signs that are on your south and north node, and the houses that they're in, and specifically if you have any placements that are squaring the nodes. I mean, it could be a whole talk in and of itself to go into the details of what each of those individual placements would actually mean for you. But you can find a lot of guides online that give you a lot of just general information, once you know what those placements are. And for like me personally, I have my south node is in Pisces in the 8th house, and what that would mean is that I'm kind of meant to take a lot of occulted spiritual information that is stored, that I've discovered in past lives and like want to bring here, and is part of my goal to bring that and make it something material that could then help, I don't want to say the world like I'm like some kind of superhero, but like meant to like help other people pretty much. And so, like it's definitely not going to be as extreme as that boy that came from Mars. So it's not to that extent, but they're definitely, you definitely do bring in things from your past life. Each person is going to bring in something different, obviously, depending on your placements and depending on what squares your nodes. Because, just in summary, if you have any placements that square your nodes, that make a square aspect, those are pretty much areas of your life that carry a significance with you that you kind of need to integrate. You need to like work on pretty much in order for you to achieve whatever your north node goal is. So that would be, if you're curious about maybe like any of this specific kind of stuff, that would be a good place to look.
Thank you for that. That was a very good add-on. So, what is a starseed's greatest superpower that too lives dormant? I must have fucked up that grammar. I apologize. That lives dormant within the collective. So, I would say, and we've already touched on this earlier, and I just got to reinforce it again. Junk and I both did. Your greatest superpower is the relationship that you have with yourself. That will bring about the most profound changes in your life. Is once you have, at the very least, a codependent relationship with yourself. Because at the end of the day, all you will ever have is yourself. No matter what. That is the only thing that will be constant in your life, is yourself. Junk. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah. Again. Oh, there we go. Okay. Greatest superpower is love. It all comes down to love. Um, for me, that just makes the world of a difference when you realize a society is functioning off external validation and conditioned love. You know, do this for me, then I'll do this for you, maybe. But to give love freely, unconditionally, is a strength that only a starseed can bear. And there are many that are actively moving into this heart-centered, mission, objective, and it's beautiful. The welcoming of empathy back, to see others not as status but as human beings, as souls within these physical vessels, is so powerful, because as Scuba said, like, you're looking at creation. Everybody that looks back at you, for the most part, is creation manifest, and it's a very beautiful thing to see the self in another. So I would say just the ability to really produce the infinite love of source into your actions, your words, your frequency, and then radiate. Let others see the light within you.
Anybody else want to chime in on what the starseed's greatest superpower is?
I would like to add on with that, kind of echoing on what was just said there. I think empathy and compassion are the greatest superpowers or assets. Well before all the pandemic business and all the division with the politics and everything, I've been noting how compassion and sympathy just seem to be disappearing from the world, or it's done in such a way that like it's for display, someone will put a banner on their social media page that they donated to help build a school in Africa or to Ukraine, or to whatever, but they'll have family members that are going through serious medical emergencies, and they won't even send the proverbial thoughts and prayers to them, or let alone hey, can I give you a ride to the doctor for your treatments, or anything like that. You just see this weird cutoff from people that they want to be viewed as good people. They want those charity deduction write-offs on their tax returns every year, and the social media banners that tell them that they're a good person, but they don't want to act like that. No, and that's not to say that people aren't a good person. It's just that they're just selective how they choose it. But I said that the undoing of humanity is our apathy, and that decay of compassion and empathy. So for me, it's been difficult because I've never labeled myself a starseed or anything. Starting to realize probably am. I was brought up real strict Christian background, so my whole life I've had to reconcile my pursuit of other belief systems, or other avenues of spiritual thought with the faith I was brought up in, and I came to a place where I realized, you don't have to renounce one to be the other. You can encompass the truth that is in various teachings and integrate them together. And as far as past life stuff, it's always been very random for me. And one of mine was walking through a museum exhibit, and there was an item that just took me back, and I had a full recollection of a life there. And no, it wasn't Cleopatra or Julius Caesar. I was a more servant type person. But Yeah, it's just interesting. I think everyone wants to do a fanciful rendition of what a past life is, and it's not always something heroic or history making. It's like somebody had said earlier, you were fulfilling your purpose, whether that means you were a pottery maker or you were a Praetorian guard or the pharaoh. I mean, you had your role and you had to play that out. And we're all here trying to figure out what those roles are in best way that we can. And I've found personally that as I get closer to paths that I'm supposed to be on, I find there to be first there's a synchronicity where everything falls into place and it's like, wow, okay, this is it. And then I'm met by immediate opposition, like other forces might be trying to thwart my efforts or throw me off track. And for my past experience, it typically happens to be through health issues and also deaths of loved ones. These things that you have to try to stay strong and remember who you are and what your purpose is, and allow yourself to heal, to grieve, to integrate the healing process and the illness and the mourning into the purpose of your current path, and to let it strengthen you instead of break you down. Oh, sorry, I was just really been on a tangent there, but that's empathy and compassion, integration of various
Very beautiful, Birdcat. Thank you. So, does anybody else have anything else words? Does anybody else have anything to say before we move on?
Well, just my eye. April 20th is an eclipse. And I believe, if my understanding is correct, magical things are not unheard of during eclipses. And this is a solar eclipse.
Well, I guess next Wednesday we're talking about eclipses because it's on Thursday. Alrighty. So that is gonna basically be it for that. Now we move on to our favorite topic,